All right, welcome into our next round basketball podcast. Next round basketball podcast live edition tonight because we have some developing news and we've got a really big basketball game this weekend in Auburn between Alabama and Auburn. Jim Dunaway, that's our basketball expert. Riley Norris, former Alabama basketball player. The developing news, it is not surprising anyone, Riley, but we start off with the fact that Oklahoma and Texas will be coming in 2024 for football. So the first basketball season will be 24-25, the 25 NCAA tournament. Now that all that's settled, what does Oklahoma and Texas bring to the SEC basketball-wise? We talked about football a lot.
Yeah, no, I think it brings a lot basketball-wise as well. Not only the big names of Texas and Oklahoma and what they mean to obviously football, but basketball. I mean, you look at Texas, they're ranked number 5 in the country right now. They're a really, really good team. I know Alabama fans are still sour over the taste that Oklahoma left from a couple weeks ago. So Oklahoma has a really good team, but two good coaches. They can recruit at a high level. So basketball just got two really good teams that's going to step up the league to make it even tougher.
And I personally think this year the Big 12 is the toughest basketball league out there, top to bottom. I mean, you got a team like West Virginia who won last night. They're 4-7 in the league, but they're like in the top 20 in the net and the Ken Pom. It seems like these two are leaving a really maybe the toughest basketball conference and coming to a really good one. They'll bring a lot of street cred, I believe, to the league, don't you?
I believe so too. I mean, if you look at the Big 12, you got 5 teams in the top 15 in the nation. So, it's a battle every night. And like you said, you had West Virginia, you had Oklahoma, you had some teams in there that are, getting some big wins like West Virginia beat Iowa State last night. I think adding those teams and to the SEC with the kind of competition they're playing against now is only going to make the SEC stronger. And recruiting wise, it's going to be tougher, right? I mean, you got those big name schools going after the same recruits as the Kentuckys, the Auburns, the Alabamas, the Tennessee. So it's going to be interesting to see how it folds out. But I'm excited. Basketball is going to be awesome to see here in the next few years.
I agree. So we're excited about Texas and Oklahoma coming in. He's Riley Norris. I'm Jim Dunaway. As you load up here on all of our platforms of the next round, remember we got a new live show going tomorrow, Friday at 9 a.m. Central Time. This will be available for your convenience all the way into the Auburn-Alabama game. We'll talk about that in a second. Chris joins the show real quickly and says they also bring not only some great men's sports teams, but women's as well, especially in softball. You're not kidding, man. You got some great softball tradition there, Chris, including what Oklahoma has done in recent years as a dynasty there. Before we talk Auburn and Alabama basketball, we had a discussion on the show this week about teams that we potentially think are national championship teams right now. We're a month away from Selection Sunday. We did 6 teams. If I asked you 4, 5, 6 teams that you think have the potential to make a Final Four and possibly win a national championship, who would you put on the list, Riley?
So I have my 5 top teams. Some of them are going to be predictable, but I got Purdue, Alabama. I like Arizona a lot. I think they got a lot of depth. They got Tabellas. He's averaging 20.8 points a game. They got a lot of veteran leadership to go along with that. My other 2 teams rounding out the top 5 would be Kansas. I love Jalen Wilson. I mean, he's averaging over 20 points a game. Really, really good, dynamic player. He had an off night, and they still ended up winning the other night. And you got guys like Grady Dick stepping up who can actually make some shots, and he's a really good player. My last team that I added to it, I could have went Houston. I didn't. I went Baylor. So I watched Baylor play against Arkansas. I've watched them. The games that they've lost been really, really close. And they got 2 guards that are veterans. Well, one of them's a veteran, Adam Flagger, who's been around the league and scored the ball really well. And then they got a freshman, Keontae George, who's averaging 17.5 points a game. He's really, really good. And I think in March, you got to have guys that can score the ball. Houston is a team that's right there that I thought could be in the discussion, but scoring wise, I think sometimes they're limited. I think they grind the games out sort of like Tennessee does, and sometimes that doesn't work in your favor.
A little Big 12 flavor for you there, huh? What do you think of the Big 10? You got Purdue up there, and only one other Big 10 team ranked in the AP poll right now. Is the Big 10 a little overrated right now, in your opinion?
I think so. I look at Joe Lenardi and see who the teams he has in the tournament, off his prediction, which is pretty accurate year after year. And I think so. I think they got a lot of teams. I think they're around 7 teams that are going to projected to be in the tournament, but Purdue stands out above everybody else pretty easily. I know Indiana's pretty good. They got a big guy that's really, really good. But ultimately, I think it's Purdue, and then it's everybody else that follows.
Okay, a couple of questions from our listeners before we get to the Auburn-Alabama discussion. NH3425 says, with Oklahoma and Texas coming to the SEC, what's the impact for the SEC for recruiting standpoint against other schools and other conferences in those states? I think when Texas A&M joined the league, that opened up Texas a lot for football and a little bit for basketball. I don't know what the state of Texas looks like as a basketball recruitment, but I know it's great in football. What does Texas bring as a basketball state? Do you respect their high school basketball in Texas?
I do. They got some big time recruits. I mean, you look at Alabama, they got Rylan Griffin, who was right there out of Texas. He's really, really good player. He's turned into, having a pretty good freshman year. Then you got Cason Wallace at Kentucky, who was a 5-star recruit. That was a really, really, really good high school player. Texas is, known for football, right? I mean, recruits, football, powerhouses in high school football, but also they got the same athletes in basketball, and it's shown. So it's going to be a battle. I think that's even going to open the doors even more when Texas and OU bring that brand of the SEC when they're recruiting these athletes.
All right, so that's the official news today. The Big 12 reached an agreement with Oklahoma, Texas, ESPN, and Fox to allow July 1, 2024, a year early, the exit of Oklahoma and Texas into the SEC. But the big story this weekend around the SEC is Alabama, who's 11-0 on the road at Auburn. Tough place to play in Auburn, who has lost 4 or 5. So it's a big game for Auburn to maybe get that NCAA tournament resume ready. Jeremy starts us off from over on Facebook saying roll tide. So let's jump into that. We'll start on the Alabama side, Riley, one you're familiar with. What does Nate Oates' style do? Does it help a team when they're on the road in an environment like Neville Arena down in Auburn? Does his free-flowing love any three you take attitude help a team in that kind of atmosphere, or does it hurt a team?
It's kind of a cliche answer, but I believe it depends if you're hitting shots or not, right? I think if the shots are falling, obviously it's going to end up good for you. But I think that's twofold because you do have a lot of young players on Alabama's team. So if shots aren't falling and Auburn's able to get, a few shots to go down, then, you get a little bit tight on the Alabama side. But I think if you're able to knock down a few shots, turn Auburn over, and if Alabama can take care of the ball, because Auburn's going to pressure the ball, right? They're going to get into you, they're going to press, they're going to do a lot of stuff to make it hard for you to score. So if they can kind of, take care of the ball and get some good shots and good looks, I think it can be positive for Alabama. But, if you look at the Florida game, they went back and played Auburn's first SEC game. Florida plays very similar to Auburn, slow style, grinded out type game. And Auburn came back and won that game. So I think if you can make some shots and get out, sort of like Texas A&M did, it could be in your favor.
I'm interested. Auburn, you mentioned the defense. What do they do defensively? It seems like they, at times, remind me of Nolan Richardson's 40 Minutes of Hell back when I was younger, where they will challenge you and almost challenge the officials to call as many fouls as they can, and that burned them a little bit at Texas A&M. I thought they called a lot of fouls, some of them legit, some of them not. What do you make of Bruce Pearl and his style of defense and how he challenges opponents?
Yeah, so especially at Auburn, they're going to get in the passing lanes. They're going to make it tough for you to run any type of offense. If you look, it's hard to even make a simple pass to the wing because their players are denying the pass. So I think, Alabama's got to be able to slip some screens and slip some cuts and try to beat this Auburn defense. But ultimately, it's tough, right? I mean, they're going to pressure the ball, and it's at Auburn. So it's going to be loud. It's going to be a crazy environment. So you got to be able to not only withstand the Auburn defense, but you got to withstand the crowd noise, the emotion that goes into that type of rivalry game.
You got Chris here who's making a great point. Again, this is our next round podcast. He's Riley Norris. I'm Jim Dunaway. His question, Bama still got, well, not a question, it's a fact. Bama still got Auburn 2 times, Tennessee and Texas A&M left. Auburn's got Bama twice, Tennessee and Kentucky. both these teams. It's a big game Saturday, but it's also a huge stretch at the end of the season leading into the postseason. Those are two monster schedules for both these teams.
It is. No, it is. And this is a tough stretch. We knew Alabama has some key games, like you said, with Auburn twice, Tennessee coming up, and A&M on the road. So they had a big stretch. But then Auburn's had a tough stretch. I know they lost the last 4 out of the 5. And then it's only going to get tougher down the road with at Kentucky, at Bama. Tennessee comes home to Auburn. So this is a big game. I mean, for both teams, you look at Alabama, who's trying to win the league outright. This is a big step in their direction. But Auburn, you look at Auburn, who maybe slid down to a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. So a win like this would put them probably back up to about a 7 seed, and it put them back into the discussion for an SEC title.
Yeah, Landmine Believer brings that up. Did y'all see Nate take a shot at Auburn? He calls Saturday's game their Super Bowl. But I think what he meant is what you're saying there, that it is just such a big opportunity for Auburn to get a resume win. This is the kind of win that puts you in the tournament.
Yeah, Auburn needs a quad 1 win. I mean, when the committee's looking at the resumes at the end of the end of the year, they look at quad 1 wins, obviously, and Auburn needs a big win like this, against the Alabama team. And then obviously to add to it, College game day is going to be there. So, all eyes are at Auburn, Alabama for this game on Saturday.
Riley Norris, former Alabama player, Jim Dunaway of The Next Round. This is our basketball podcast each week. Live edition tonight with the announcement of Texas and Oklahoma rolling into the league a year early. That becoming official tonight. We talked about that to start this off. We're talking Auburn and Alabama down in Auburn, 1 o'clock on Saturday. Much more of that coming up Saturday in our live show. But I wanted to ask you, what will you be looking at early in this game as an indicator, both positive for Alabama, positive for Auburn? What's an early indicator that your basketball eyes will be looking for in this game?
So there's 2 things. I think the number one is the first 4 minutes. Anytime you go into a game, really any game, not just a big rivalry game, not just you're playing on the road in a hostile environment, but any type of game, the most important is the first 4 minutes. You want to win those first 4 minutes because that kind of dictates how the half's going to go, right? I mean, if you're turning the ball over, that's going to kind of lead to more turnovers or missed shots, whatever it may be. The other thing is the turnover battle. If Auburn can turn over Alabama and get some easy baskets in transition where they've struggled to shoot the 3 or struggled to run some type of offense this year, I think Auburn's going to find success, right? I mean, but we look at Alabama, if they're able to take care of the ball and, maybe win the 50-50 ball battle with Auburn, I think it's going to be a good game and a close game.
This really feels like a 50-50 coin toss. I know Alabama is 11-0, and Auburn is sort of a 7, 8, 9 seed right now in the tournament. But playing there and Auburn needing that win, this is going to be a dogfight. A couple of other basketball notes before we start to wind down here. Tennessee, after getting upset by Vandy last night as we record this, does it surprise you a little bit the way Tennessee has looked on the road at Vandy and on the road at Florida?
It does that they end up losing the game. But like you said, if you look at the Florida game, if you look at the Auburn game, even they struggle to score the ball. Tennessee is known to be, they're going to be physical. They're going to take you out of offense. They're going to make scoring for you difficult. But the other part to that is they're having trouble, scoring themselves. So I think this kind of came back when they're on the road and they called a Vandy team, that hostile environment, team that was itching for a big win like this. And it came back and haunted them. But, Tennessee's got a good team. I think obviously, with the type of players they got with Vescovy and the big guys they got down low, I think that they're going to bounce back. Their defense is too good. But ultimately, it's kind of shocking because this is the kind of stuff you look at March Madness, and a couple of years ago when Virginia got upset, they kind of were the same style of play as Tennessee, and they just struggled to score, but they were really good defensively. So we'll see if Tennessee can find some offense coming down the stretch.
Jeremy says first time for him to join the conversation here in our basketball podcast on The Next Round. Live version tonight with the developing news as we talk a little hoops here. And Chris adds, Chris was talking earlier in the chat about how awesome the 80s were with Wimp and Sonny. We sort of have that again with Nate and Bruce and what Andy Kennedy is doing down at UAB. It is a good time to be a basketball fan in the state, and a game like this Saturday just really gives an exclamation point to where basketball is right now in the state, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It's an excitement. It's a buzz. And like you said, not only Alabama, Auburn, but you look at UAB, what Andy Kennedy's doing there, and the wins he's getting, the players that he's able to get at UAB. The good job he's done there. It's been awesome. But this is beyond just one basketball game. I mean, the way that Auburn's had success in the past, the way Nate's had success at Alabama, they're only building onto this and being able to get these big time recruits. Speaks to the volumes that they've done at these respective schools.
Okay, two more questions. First of all, give me maybe a surprise star. I mean, we know Wendell Green, we know Janai Broom, we know Brandon Miller and some of the guys at Alabama. Give me a guy that you'll look for either team that could flip this thing around, that could change it for either Alabama or Auburn to get a victory on Saturday. Give me maybe a surprising star in the game.
So I think it's not really that surprising, but it kind of is because it's not your Brandon Miller. It's not a Mark Sears. I think Javon Quinterly's got to be big off the bench. I think he's been playing well the last few games, and he's been able to take care of the ball, knock down some open shots, find some open teammates, but kind of heading that second unit off the bench. He's got to be able to be the guy that he's been the last few games and be able to have an effect in all areas of the game, not just scoring the ball, but like I said, being able to dish it to some open guys and playing defense at the high level that he has been. And then for Auburn, I think the guy Jalen Williams. I think if he's able to knock down some shots and kind of stretch the floor, take some of the pressure off of you got Wendell Green trying to score a lot. You got Janai Broom on the post. Take some pressure off of those guys and be able to open the floor a little bit. I think those two guys are going to have an impact on the game.
Yeah, Jalen hit some big threes at Texas A&M when Auburn was on their runs before the Aggies closed out and pulled the upset of the Tigers there. It should be a fun one. As a former player, a month from Selection Sunday, is this when you started to really start to think about the NCAA tournament, or is that something that's always on your mind?
So I think it's kind of it depends where you are. Like as a freshman, maybe I think you kind of get caught up in a lot of the outside noise and everything that's affecting, kind of the season that's going on. But then you also look at it from a veteran standpoint of you've been through this before. You kind of know how it is, how long the season is, how important these games at the end of the season are. But the other part to that is Alabama is not really worried from their standpoint of necessarily making the tournament. It's kind of what seed you're going to get. So I don't really think there's a lot of pressure on them from the tournament wise. I think it's more on Auburn of needing to get a win like this, a quality win, and then also where they're going to be at in the seed line. Obviously, you don't want to be in a perfect world, an 8 or 9 seed because that second game is going to be against a 1 seed. So it's a big game. I'm excited. I think it's going to be a back and forth game. I think it's going to be a close game, though.
Just the camera angles here. My 5'10.5" frame. It seems like you're looking down at me. This is like very real life. I'm looking up to Riley Norris in our podcast tonight. Okay, we'll do it again next week. I can't wait to react to Alabama and Auburn, and then Alabama Tennessee. It's a tough stretch for the Crimson Tide right here. The next 2 road games, huh?
It is. It's a test. So we're going to see. How that non-conference schedule really helped them in the type of environments that they played and even some of the games they played this far. But 2 of the tougher games for sure coming up on the schedule. And if they can make it through these 2 games, they got a great shot at, winning the SEC outright and hopefully keeping some momentum into the SEC tournament.
All right, man. We'll talk next week. Riley, man, enjoy the rest of your trip and get home safely, okay?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, man.